Hi everyone, welcome to the Fuse webinar Wednesday. My name's Yvonne Moores. I'm going to be taking you through some of the introduction today, giving you a bit of an update, and then I'll be handing over to a few of our presenters for today's information. So the agenda today is to introduce myself and the rest of the presenters. We've got Chris Price and Lilliam Rosario, who are presenting on an overview of the upcoming Virtual CSS. I've got a little bit of information about that, but they'll go into a lot more detail. We then have Lukasz from Biogen, who's going to take us through a white paper that's been put together on data anonymization and risk assessment automation. And then we'll be handing over to Liz and Anne, who are going to take us through a best practices guide and white paper on data transparency, a global view of the clinical transparency landscape. So, yeah, without much ado, I will go on to the next slide, just to remind everybody that if you want to ask questions, there's a Q&A panel that you can open up. You can type your questions into there, and then we'll reroute them to the right person, and we'll go through all the answers and the questions at the end. So what we're wanting to go through today is to give you an introduction to all the events that are upcoming over the next few months. So the first virtual event that we have is in September, which is the US CSS event. So it's only 2 months to go until that event now. The early bird registration closes for that this week. So if you want to attend, please go to the website, the Fuse website, and you'll be able to go on there to register at that early bird rate. We've got 18 really exciting posters confirmed for the event, and there'll be a live poster event on the 22nd of September, so there'll be more information about how that will work. We'll then also be reintroducing the event-long hackathon as part of the CSS this year, with it being virtual. And to find out more about the hackathon and the panel discussions that we'll be having as part of the event, you can go to the Fuse blog, which will give you a lot more information. As I said, Chris and Lilliam, I'm sure, will give you a few more details as part of their presentation. The next virtual event we have this year is the EU Connect, which is in November, the 9th to the 13th. The early bird rates close for that in 4 weeks, so make the most of that rate and get yourself registered before the 28th of August. We've had an amazing number of abstracts this year, 232 in total, and it was a very hard job to whittle those down so that we can bring you over 150 on-demand presentations. With the event being virtual this year, there is a slight difference between how we'll run those presentations. We'll have some on-demand, some live. If you watch the webinar Wednesday from June, you'll see what Stephen went through then and discuss how that will work. We've also got a poster session on the Tuesday at the EU Connect, and again, stay tuned for the promotional video that's going to come out with more information as to how that's going to work as well. And then Fuse wouldn't be Fuse without our social events, so we're continuing down that theme despite the virtual method of delivering that this year. So we've got very exciting events coming up. We've got a country-based Zoom room social event on the Sunday evening, which is sponsored by Pinnacle 21. We've then got live music, a live band and a magician on the Monday night event. And then on the Tuesday, we've got a quiz night, which is quite a new thing for the Fuse team. So we're putting that together, and that's sponsored by Warman O'Brien. So as I said, please look out for how you can register and go on the Fuse website to get that early bird reduced ticket rate. Staying with the virtual theme, the rest of the single-day events from August will be on our On24 platform, which is what you're viewing now. So they'll all be virtual. You can find out more through the Fuse blog as to how to use On24 and the sort of information that can be shared on how to use it and get the most out of it, really. So our next single-day event is the 1st of August, which is this Saturday. That's in Hyderabad in India, but obviously with it not being a physical event this year, it's open for registration to anybody. So the registration's open, the app is live, so you can actually go on there and see who else is registered. So we've had an unprecedented amount of registrations for a lot of our virtual single-day events. One was over 1,000 registrations. So go in there, see if you can register yourself for that event for Saturday. And then the next event after that is in Boston on the 13th of August. Which the theme for that is navigating the world of clinical data science and submission. So the registration for that is open as well if you want to go through the Fuse website to register for that event as well. Just wanted to give you a bit of a highlight as to what the working groups are doing for Fuse. The Fuse working groups are a huge part of what we do, and we have a phenomenal amount of volunteers that are helping us to deliver through those working groups. So some of the deliverables we have out for review at the moment can be found through the Fuse website on the CS deliverables under review tab. There's two or three things there at the moment. One's from the standard analysis and code sharing working group, and one's from the optimizing the use of data standards working group. So if there are areas of interest that you would like to get involved in to review the information that's in there, please go in there and have a look at what we've delivered, and you can make comments. The Real World Evidence Group have also published a white paper on basic considerations for the use of RWE. So that's in support of regulated clinical trial submissions. So again, have a look at what's on there so you can have a look at the publication there as well. We're also calling for more volunteers where possible. Excuse me. The first one is for the Data Transparency Working Group, which has put together a terminology, or wants to put together a terminology harmonization in data sharing and disclosure deliverables project. If you want to get involved in that, if that's an area of interest for you, please just contact the working groups at fuse.eu email address. Similarly, the non-clinical working group they're setting up a project for the harmonization of SEND implementation to enable historical control data analysis. And again, if it's an area of interest that you'd like to be involved in to volunteer for, then please get in contact. We've also got a slightly different role that we're looking for a volunteer for as well, and this is for a power user of Microsoft Teams. So Fuse is actively looking for somebody that's got a lot of knowledge about the Microsoft Teams platform, and you would be in that role an advisor to the key users of the Teams platform, helping Fuse to get the most out of that environment. So if that's something, again, you've got the time and the knowledge to help with, then please do volunteer for that role as well. We've also had what we're calling a special project rather than a working group project, which was the COVID-19 guidance documents. So the task force got together back in May, and now 7 blogs have been published, which you can find on the Fuse website as well. What we're doing is producing a guidance document that pulls all the information from those 7 blogs, and that will be put together as a one-stop downloadable that guidance document that you can have a look at through the Fuse website as well. That should be available shortly, and gives some support to clinical data scientists on how to address the data challenges that's been caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. We've also got an SDTM ADAM implementation FAQ project, which has published responses on their wiki to the questions submitted on the SDTM ADAM IG nuances and data submissions. So again, if you want to have a look at that, that's available through the Fuse website as well. So that's the brief introduction before we hand over to Chris and Lilliam. As I said, if you've got any questions that you want to raise throughout the webinar today, please put them into the Q&A box that you can see on the bottom panel, and then we'll get those fed through to the right people at the end of today's webinar. So thank you. I'm going to hand over to you, Chris and Lilliam.
So thank you, Yvonne. What we'll do is we'll give a quick update around what's happening at CSS and what's occurring there. So to start that, maybe I'll hand over to Lilliam to kick us off.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope everybody's doing well. Really miss seeing everybody in person, but know that we all are doing our best to do our best work and really bring ourselves to our work and to our families and to the community in these very interesting and uncertain times. So my job here really is to tell you that we're really excited about the Computational Science Symposium. And so a lot of things are different, right? So some things have changed. So this time we're meeting in September rather than in June, right? We are going to be meeting virtually rather than in person. So, however, a lot of things are the same. So we continue to have an incredible drive to make a difference, right? So we've created this event. It thrives in collaboration and leveraging everybody's unique talents, and that it continues to be the same. So the thing about the times right now is that we are facing a pandemic, and that teaches us a lot of lessons. It also reminds us of the importance of what we do to protect public health, right? So each of us contributes a unique talent and a unique activity that helps us protect public health. And I think that's what brings us together. And it reminds us that we really shouldn't be going alone. We should be going together. And this is what the basis of this activity is really driving on collaboration, on working together, on making a difference and contributing to public health. So the Computational Science Symposium, as you heard, is going to be in September. We are really hoping that you make it there. CDER and FDA continue to be completely committed to this activity. We are co-sponsoring again the event, and we've participated for the last 9 years, and that continues to be a testament to the relevance and the impact of these CSS working groups. So we value that the CSS is a non-competitive collaboration forum, that it brings regulators, industry, and technology providers, and that really we are driving to meet unmet computational science needs in support of drug product development and regulatory review. So again, a lot of things are different. The thriving in collaboration continues to be the same, and the invitation to participate. So if this is going to be your first time attending a CSS, know that it is a little bit different, right? So because it thrives in collaboration, we really want people to be working together. So we also beg your indulgence, right? We are trying to work out the virtual environments. We are trying to figure out how to optimize new technologies. And the most important thing is that we really are trying to meaningfully connect and focus and participate, given that it is a virtual environment. If you have joined the CSS previously, welcome back. And we really need your help. We need you to bring your energy, your ideas, your expertise, and really to work to make a virtual environment work for you and for the community that you are contributing to. So we recognize that things are going to be different, that could potentially a little bit harder. And what we need you to bring is that buzz of innovation and the enthusiasm that we've heard in the hallways and past CSS to bring it somehow to this virtual environment. I invite you to really turn your curiosity and your courage to build and sustain an active and vibrant virtual community this time around. So lots of working groups, and I know that there was a variety of calls on what the working groups are looking for. I want to make sure that you understand that we have the data transparency working group, right? We have the optimizing the use of data standards working group, the non-clinical topics, the standard analysis and code sharing, the emerging trends working group, the educating for the future, and lots of subgroups within those that are working really hard to make a difference. So this event really is defined by action and collaboration, and we really need you to come in to dive deep and to collaborate. Most of all, in years past, we say, have fun, be present, learn and share over the 2 days that we'll be together, and know that you are making a difference. So when that plenary closes, that it doesn't end. It continues throughout the year with more work and more contributions and collaborations. And I like to remember the quote by Helen Keller, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. So we really look forward to having you and trying out this virtual event with the same energy, enthusiasm, and commitment that we've done in the past. Thank you.
Thanks, Lilliam. So I'll go into a little bit more detail around what we actually will be doing on those 3 days in September. So most importantly, the dates, they're from the September the 21st to September the 23rd. That's Monday to Wednesday. The session will be we'll split those 3 days into 2 sessions per day. And we have 7 different working groups meeting across those 3 days. I'll talk a little bit more about those in a moment. We'll also have the first ever event-long Fuse hackathon. And we also have some additional on-demand material. So there'll be, normally we run workshops around the event. This time we'll be running an on-demand workshop on safety analytics for integrated analyses. So you'll be able to view that at your leisure if you sign up to the event. So the agenda for the working groups. So as always, we have lots of different working groups ongoing. So we have data transparency, education, emerging trends and technologies, non-clinical topics, optimizing the use of data standards, and 2 new working groups for Fuse now. So building on the success of our standards analysis and code sharing working group, we've now grown that into a data visualization and open source technologies, clinical research working group, and a safety analytics working group. Just to pull out a couple of key topics that we're going to be talked about during the working group sessions. So these aren't presentations, these are actual discussions and work that takes place at CSS. While we do have some plenary sessions, the main bulk of the effort comes from the actual chance to sit down and work together. So in data transparency, we'll be having some updates from regulators, from FDA, from Health Canada and FDA, and also looking at things like synthetic data. Emerging trends and technology, we'll be looking at its normal mix of forward-thinking technologies. So for example, things like FHIR in clinical research. Non-clinical will continue their good work, looking across all the different areas where non-clinical data comes into that space. So, for example, the recent Fuse Bioaccelerate collaboration. The data visualization and open source technologies piece will be looking at, principally looking at the hackathon on that side, and optimizing data standards has a new project that will be launched with the data standards implementation governance, and also really looking to see what to optimize next in data standards. In safety analytics, we'll be looking at what we are currently doing and also really launching that working group to help drive that piece forward, and also our existing collaboration with FDA and ASA around interactive volcano and forest plots. So as per usual, we do have plenary sessions as part of this event. So our opening plenary session will be from the FDA, where we'll receive an update from the Office of New Drugs, looking at their pre-market safety analytics program, updates from the CDER Office of Biostatistics, Analytics and Informatics, so really looking at what's going on there, and also looking at some of the compliance and analysis statistics from both CDER and CBER for the first half of 2020 to see how are we actually doing in meeting the requirements to ensure standardized data is being submitted. We also have 2 panel discussions. So our first panel discussion will be on COVID-19. And this will really be looking to how can we learn lessons from all the agility we've shown in this pandemic. We've managed to launch studies faster. We've managed to move data around faster. We've shared data faster. Regulators have addressed challenges faster. Standards organizations have developed standards rapidly as well. So what lessons can we do? So actually, how do we make this agile way of working more of the way of the future? The second panel we'll be looking at is building on the Innovation Friday sessions that we've had over the last few months from Fuse, coming out of the Fuse FDA Data Science Innovation Challenges. We'll look at the 3 different challenges that were launched by Fuse and FDA and were shared as part of Innovation Fridays, to see what lessons we've learned from those and see what the outcomes are from those. And lastly, as Yvonne mentioned earlier, part of the CSS is the ability to and the opportunity to share what the working groups have done in that collaborative environment. So the poster session will go ahead. All our poster presenters will be sharing those posters through a live virtual session. Audience members will also have the opportunity to ask questions via the app of all the presenters and to engage with the different posters on that. So, the Fuse Hackathon, this is our first event hackathon, and this is really building on the fact that many clinical data sciences are really expanding their toolset to include more open source tech solutions, things like R and Python. And that's building on their existing skill sets, really helping them use the right tool for the right job. As part of the hackathon, we're really aiming to demonstrate the capabilities of current technologies and open source technologies in what's currently our daily work. So that's the creation of analysis data sets and output generation. We will also look at the development and qualification of packages, and this will take place throughout the event. The outputs will obviously be shared with the Fuse community and will be able to be used as a resource. So lastly, there's a single price for all that content. The call for posters has been and gone, and we've selected those. Again, a challenging task to select the best posters that fit into a virtual session. And a key note, the early bird deadline closes this Friday. That's July the 31st. The ticket price is per person. And if you do have any questions, please do contact the Fuse office. And the costs for the event are there. So I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at the event, even if it's in a virtual forum. We will still have fun, we still will be productive, and we will still deliver on the great work that the Computational Science Symposium has delivered over the past 9 years, and that we will continue to deliver, even if it's in a slightly different format. So I think I now hand over to Lukasz.
Thanks, Chris. I hope everyone can hear me. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lukasz Kniola, and I'm a data sharing analyst at Biogen. But what's more relevant today is I'm here to present a new white paper that we just prepared. So for the past year, and probably a bit longer than that, I've had the privilege to lead the team of experts within the Data Transparency Working Group to develop this document, which would discuss the process of data anonymization and assessing risk of re-identification, and also looking for ways to automate this process. And in the next few minutes, I would like to tell you about this deliverable, what it covers, why we think it's a great resource for both experienced and new colleagues in this de-identification space. The team included de-identification SMEs from across the industry, and I'm sure looking at this slide, you will be able to recognize some of the names from Fuse projects and presentations, conferences. So before I go any further, I'll just quickly say many thanks to the whole team for their contributions, for their willingness to share their knowledge and expertise, for their time. I also want to mention Jean-Marc Ferrand, who's been pushing this project forward and keeping it on its tracks, which was quite important sometimes. And I also want to thank Lauren White from the Fuse admin team, who's been very helpful at all stages of the project and really helped us move along. So the original idea for this document was to create something that would serve as a sort of a recipe, a step-by-step instruction for anonymizing data sets. And we started by figuring out the main big steps that are required to get from the original data set to its anonymized version. And we split each of those big steps into individual smaller items. these could be tasks that needed doing or rules that could be applied to data sets and variables and so on. And so we ended up with a spreadsheet of 10 major steps and around, if I remember correctly, 60 individual tasks between them. So we had to go through each and every task, discuss it, in detail to provide as much information and context as we could. And I think this is what makes this paper really valuable, is that we shared our collective hands-on experience of actually implementing some of those solutions rather than just providing sort of dry, untested theory. And once we've gone through this whole thing, we ended up with a huge spreadsheet of dozens of tabs, and each of the tab was dedicated to just a small portion of the process. So there wasn't really much of a flow to the whole thing. And it really needed to be converted from this, discrete tabs into a continuous flowing document, which we did. And in the process, we merged some sections, we moved other sections, just so that the whole document kind of reads in the right order. And when we thought that the text was good enough, we then had 3 rounds of reviews. The first one within the working group, the second within the Fuse community, and then there was also a public one as well. And we received some very valuable comments, very thoughtful comments, which we implemented carefully. Now, one area that received probably the most questions and comments was the small section with definitions. And that just goes to show how, with the different regulations and jurisdictions and interpretations of what we're dealing with, make the whole thing a bit of a challenge. In its final form, after all the work has been done and all the reviews have been finished, the document in its current form, in its final form, covers a lot of material regarding anonymization of data sets. So starting from pre-processing of data sets to setting up assumptions and conditions, it discusses finding identifiers in the data, applying different rules to those identifiers. It looks at different aspects of risk of re-identification, how we can assess it, and it also talks about putting it all together, adding some sort of documentation around the whole process in the form of anonymization report. So you can see it really does cover sort of the length of the process as much as we were able to do that. To make our lives just a little bit easier, we based the discussion around SDTM formats, and that simplified things when it comes to naming conventions and formatting and so on. We're all familiar with that format, but there's nothing really stopping anyone from extrapolating this onto other formats like ADAM or even legacy datasets. What this document doesn't cover is we deliberately stayed away from document and report anonymization, so natural language processing and all that side of things, because that would just add a layer of complexity which we probably weren't ready to tackle at that stage. So across the length of the process, we also wanted to be as broad as possible and as exclusive as possible. We did our best to include ideas and examples which may not immediately be obvious, especially to those new to the topic. And similarly, we highlighted things to look out for. So as I said, we used our hands-on experience, and to gain that, we had to make a lot of mistakes and learn from them. And hopefully, through this document, you may save yourself making some of those mistakes as well. And finally, there are also thoughts on how to automate parts of the process, how to take advantage of the tools that are already available, how to make use of the fact that there's quite a bit of repetition from one project to another. So that's the length and the breadth of the process. And then right from the start of this project, it was my personal ambition to add one more layer to this document, namely to have code examples and code snippets. And my thinking being, you can only automate things properly using, the power of computers and programming languages. So it became clear early on that choosing just one programming language over another, wouldn't do. So I started preparing some code examples, and I started with Python and SAS. And these were covering, first of all, individual rules and transformations, but I then moved on to more complex tasks. So there's, for example, a piece of code to identification standard spreadsheet to your data. There are obviously programs for the risk calculation itself. So that's 2 languages. Then another of our team members, Jasper, helped with R examples, which got us up to 3 languages. And then out of pure enthusiasm, I suppose, I also translated a couple of pieces into Julia, which is, I guess, a relatively new open source programming language, which is very much data oriented. I just wanted to see if it's possible, what it does, and it was quite a nice exercise. And so, with all those, with all the content I just described, it's pretty much the documents that has now been published. So the length of the process is in there. The breadth is in there to make the document as full, as informative as possible. And then we also went into some depth to make it useful and applicable. So I want to invite you and encourage you to download and read our deliverable. I will also talk about it some more at the upcoming EU Connect conference, where I plan to dedicate part of that presentation to the comparison of the different languages and my thoughts on how they fit the use specifically in the context of this document. And this has also been mentioned a few times already, but I also said a word or two about having trouble with definitions. And setting definitions is definitely not a problem unique to our deliverable. So to address that exact issue, as Yvonne mentioned, there is now a new working team that's been set up to see if we can harmonize the terminology, especially for the purposes of future disclosure deliverables. And Sarah Hewitt and I are co-leading that team. So if you'd like to join or even just learn some more about it, feel free to reach out to either of us or to Fu's office. And then I think I'm out of time now, so the only thing remaining for me is to share the link and to thank you for listening. Thank you very much. And if I move the slide to the next one, then we can swiftly move on to the next presentation.
Great, I think that's me. So this is Liz Roberts. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. And Anne and I wanted to give a presentation, an update of what we've been doing in another one of the data transparency sub-teams, looking at a range of documents that have either been updated or created this year. So with that, I shall move to the next slide. So hopefully you're all aware of these documents. We've kind of talked about them, some of them way back to 2018, which seems like a millennia ago now. So we had an idea back in 2018 that we wanted to put together a white paper that really looked at the whole disclosure landscape, data sharing, transparency disclosure landscape. And as words and pictures are often very complementary, we started in the middle of the screen with a poster that was presented at a previous Fuse conference, where we looked at both study level and submission level deliverables that were required, particularly for different disclosure requirements. So this year we also looked at that again and updated it. That's now back on the Fuse website in its updated form. And we'd also previously published a white paper, again looking at the study level and the submission level deliverables. It's a very factual document, just trying to pull together lots of different sources of information into one place. and with updates recently, such as last year, Health Canada going live, and also the ruling, I think from February this year, from a US court case around which trials need to be disclosed on clinicaltrials.gov. We've provided some updates to that white paper as well, and that update is also available. We had one amazing member of our team, Renee Allard, who's got a passion, a real focus for the registry disclosure requirements. And so he created a line-by-line Excel spreadsheet you can see represented at the bottom of the screen, which is for every country or region, with links to what we know to be every registry he could find, and some other details. And he also looked to update that this year as well. And that one is out there too. So those were 3 deliverables that were previously released that we look to update in the first half of this year. And that's while we were working on a 4th deliverable, which was being created at the same time. And that was around a best practices guide, which was to be more practical and to complement then the very factual white paper. And at this point, I'd like to hand over to Anne Cutting, who was an amazing lead for that best practice activity, and she'll give you an update on what's happened in the last few months regarding that guide.
Thanks, Liz, very much for that intro and explanation of the first 3 guides. I hope you can see me okay, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's carry on. So the best practice guide, or BPG to its friends, was moving on from our actual white paper. We moved on to actually develop the guide, which was really full of practical recommendations by experts on how the best way to actually undertake everything from document anonymization through registry postings, trial result summaries, and data sharing and publications. So there is an awful lot of best practices in there. So we get into best practices around things such as how can you anonymize a document, how do you redact for commercially confidential, and there's an awful lot of time was spent looking between the different disclosures to think about what are the overlaps and the opportunities for alignment. So thinking about document disclosure, and then thinking about data sharing or the document anonymization for posting on registers, or the need for publications. Publications are now requiring additional data and documents, and therefore those associations, and you get into ICMJE, which is driving us towards actually registering our trials that we want to publish. So there was an awful lot of conversations in the round about how one disclosure actually touches and impacts another disclosure before you even start looking at within a particular disclosure. So, for instance, document anonymization, and thinking about what does FDA require versus what does EMA versus Health Canada. We were very fortunate to actually work very closely with Nancy Sager from FDA, and the best practice guide is a really useful summary that we worked with Nancy on, which was actually taking the key data elements in a document and particularly focusing on a clinical study report and really articulating, for instance, subject ID. How would this information be presented by FDA in one of their summaries versus EMA versus Health Canada? And actually it provides a really useful comparison of how particular information are treated when disclosed by the three key agencies. So there's an awful lot of information in there. It is a long document, but it's a good read. We tried our best to put in there lots of bookmarks and links to try and help the reader to move to the various places they're most interested in. But there's a wealth of information there that we were happy to share with our colleagues. I'm supposed to move the slides on, aren't I? Forgot that. And there are, we included in the slide pack the links, and it's a summary of the information posted. So a wealth of information from each of these documents. And most importantly, from both Liz and myself, is a really big thank you to all of the members of the workstream who contributed, and particularly the leads for each of the sections who did a tremendous amount of work helping us to pull the document together, and to the wider community who actually reviewed the document. And we also got some great comments from them and from our external reviewers. So big thank you to everybody, and hope you enjoy reading the document. And I think that's everything from me, and there's no more little yellow pieces moving on. So I'm hoping I pass on to Yvonne, back to Yvonne now.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much, Anne. And a thank you to all our other presenters as well, to Lilliam, Chris, Lukasz and Liz. So thank you to you all for some great information shared today. We've got, I think, one or two questions to go through. So the first one is to Chris, actually. Chris, if you could let us know who the panelists are for the CSS panel discussions, please. Chris, can you hear?
Yes, I can. Sorry, I've double muted myself. Apologies. So yes, so for the COVID-19 lessons from agility in the pandemic, we have a real cross-section of panelists from across industry, standards development organizations, and FDA. So we welcome Amy Gillespie from Merck, Rebecca Sudlow from Roche, Matt Jones from Veramed, Peter Van Roosel from CDISC, Matilda Kam and Kushbu Sharma, both from FDA, to talk through their experiences from large pharma, from a data sharing perspective, from CROs, from regulators, from standards development organizations. For the second panel discussion around the Fuse FDA Data Science Innovation Challenge, our free stream shares will be joining us to talk about their experiences. So that's Bev Hayes, Catherine Lee, and Paki Hegarty. So they sort of helped run those sessions, so that they will bring a really great perspective on that side.
Okay, thank you. And then just one other question that's come through, and this one's for you, Lukasz. The question is, where legacy documents do not have DM data sets, how can one apply transformations and perform quantitative risk assessment? That's from Bhavna Nanda at Kinax.
Okay, it's quite a specific question. So first of all, maybe it's just the wording of the question. We specifically chose not to look at documents per se, as in text, reports and so on and so forth. But beyond that point, the document we put together uses SDTM, so your DM domain and so on, as the basis for the discussion, just to kind of make it easier to follow. But I'm pretty sure you can very easily sort of extrapolate, use the same principles on any other, demographic information data set. A legacy data set might have different variable names, might have different sort of formats and layout, but at the end of the day, you will be able to create a sort of one record per subject with your quasi-identifiers, and use the risk analysis, the risk methodology, as if this was an SDTM dataset.
Okay, thanks, Lukasz. Hopefully that answered the question. There's no other questions in the Q&A box at the moment, so I think we can close today's call. Just wanted to, again, thank everybody for their presentations today. Wanted to thank you all for joining us as well. Please look for the information that you want to look at in the Fuse website as per the slides. And then we'll have a recording of this available for people to access as well through the Fuse website. So thanks very much again for your time, and look forward to speaking to you next month. Thank you.